Tonight we begin with something that sounds simple, a word you've heard since childhood, a unit so familiar it barely asks for attention, a light year, but linger with it for a moment. Feel how soft it seems at first, almost harmless, until you try to picture what it truly means, not as a number, not as a line in a textbook, but as a distance that stretches far beyond anything your mind was built to hold. It's here in this quiet uncertainty that the universe begins to open. Most distances in your life feel gentle. A few steps to the door, a short walk down a familiar street. Your mind understands these things without effort, but a light year sits far outside that comfort. It doesn't fit into footsteps or memories or any map you've ever used. It stretches past intuition, past experience, past every scale your senses rely on, and that's why we're starting here, at the edge of the familiar, where imagination begins to loosen, and the first quiet crack appears in how we perceive distance. Distance feels simple because it begins close to us. You know how far it is to reach the kitchen. You know the length of the hallway in the dark. Your senses carry those scales with the ease of habit. There is comfort in these small measurable things. But let's take a gentle step outward. Imagine walking to the end of your street, hearing the same soft sounds of morning traffic, passing the same windows glowing with warm light. Nothing breaks the rhythm yet. The world still fits inside the boundaries your mind expects. Now widen it a little more. Picture a familiar drive across town, the landmarks flowing past your window like quiet chapters of a book you've read many times. Your intuition still holds. You can feel the shape of the journey before you take it, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, something begins to shift. The further a distance stretches, the more fragile your sense of scale becomes. You can imagine a city an hour away, but the image feels thinner, less grounded, as if your mind is tracing the outline of something it can't fully see. It isn't a failure, it's simply human. Our intuition was shaped by footsteps, not by horizons, by short roads, not by continents, and this gentle limit is important, because it's the boundary we must cross before the universe shows us what distance truly is. There comes a moment somewhere past the familiar roads of daily life, when distance begins to slip out of your hands, not suddenly, not with any drama, just a soft feeling that your mind is reaching for something it can't quite touch. Think about the far side of your country. You may have flown there once, watching entire landscapes glide beneath the window, mountains folding into plains, rivers threading across the land like silver veins under soft afternoon light. You can remember the trip, but you cannot feel the distance the same way you feel a walk across your home. Push just a little farther. Picture a place you've never been, a coastline on the other side of the world, a city whose streets you cannot imagine, a horizon you've never seen with your own eyes. Your intuition wavers there. It loses its grip. It begins to blur around the edges, like an image drifting out of focus. And this is the subtle truth hidden inside distance. Your mind was never built to stretch endlessly. It learned scale by touching things, by walking toward them, by watching them change size as you approached. Remove those cues, and even a familiar earth becomes too large to hold. But stay with this feeling. It isn't confusion. It's the gentle threshold between the world you understand and the world that waits just beyond your instincts. Because once we step past this soft boundary, once intuition loosens its last thread, the universe finally has room to show us how distance truly behaves. There's a quiet moment somewhere just beyond the limits of the familiar earth, when distance stops behaving like something you can picture. It stretches out in a way that no longer resembles travel, but something more like a slow unfurling of emptiness. Imagine standing on a long open plain, no houses, no trees, no mountains shaping the horizon, just a wide empty field where every direction looks the same. At first it feels peaceful, but stay long enough, and you begin to notice how easily your sense of direction dissolves. There's nothing to measure against, nothing to approach, nothing to leave behind. This is what happens when a distance becomes too large for your senses. Your instinct searches for markers, a signpost, a bend in the road, a familiar rise of land, but finds none. Without reference, the mind drifts. The world becomes a smooth surface, featureless and strangely silent. Now extend that feeling outward. Imagine standing not on a plane, but somewhere between Earth and the Moon, a space with no roads, no scents, no sounds, no passing wind. There is no motion here, only the slow widening of the gap between you and everything you know. Distance loses its shape. It becomes a pure concept, a number with no texture your mind can grasp. And this is where our ideas about scale begin to collapse, not because we lack imagination, but because imagination depends on things we can touch and move toward. Remove the journey, and distance becomes something abstract, as if the world has slipped quietly out of reach. There's a delicate point where every familiar scale begins to fade, and you can almost feel your mind pausing, as if it needs a breath before stepping into something larger. It's not fear, it's simply the quiet awareness that the world is about to widen. Picture the sky just after sunset. The last traces of daylight slip behind the horizon, and the first stars appear one by one, tiny steady lights resting on a velvet dark. You've seen this countless times, yet every evening there's a brief moment when the sky feels deeper than it should be, as if its distance has silently increased. While you weren't looking, that sensation is important. It's the mind noticing scale. Just before scale becomes ungraspable, the stars aren't far in any way you can feel. You can't walk toward them. You can't imagine the road it would take. All you can do is look and let the distance settle over you, like a soft, cool wind. This is the first threshold of the cosmic journey, the place where distance stops being something your body understands and becomes something your imagination must carry alone, a handoff between instinct and wonder. And it's gentle. It doesn't overwhelm. It doesn't demand. It simply invites you to step past the limits you've grown used to and touch the edges of a scale your senses were never designed to hold. From here, the familiar world grows small. The next step takes us off the ground entirely, toward a neighbour that hangs in the sky, and yet already stretches your ability to comprehend. There's a point where every familiar measure of distance begins to feel thin, as if the numbers you've known your whole life suddenly lose their weight. It happens quietly, not with shock, but with the soft realization that your mind has reached the edge of its map. Think about the farthest place you've ever travelled, a place where the language shifts, where the colours of the streets feel slightly different, where even the air carries a new kind of rhythm. You can remember the journey, but you can't feel the full length of it anymore. Memory shortens the distance. Imagination smooths its edges. Now widen that space a little more. Picture the span of an entire continent, miles of land you've never touched, rivers you've never crossed, and mountains rising in places you've only seen in photographs. You know these places exist, yet they drift in your mind like shapes behind a thin curtain, present but unreachable. And then gently the scale breaks again. There's the rest of the planet, the vast oceans folding around it, the long arcs of flight paths stretching from one hemisphere to the other. At this size, the world becomes an idea, not a memory. Too large to sense, too far to picture. You rely on maps, on imagery, on the quiet trust that such distances are real, even if you cannot feel them. This is where the human sense of scale dissolves for the second time. The Earth is no longer a place you walk across, but a sphere you orbit in your imagination, a world too wide for footsteps, too round for instinct to grasp. And it's here, standing at the edge of what our intuition can hold, that the next step becomes inevitable. Because if even our own world has grown too large to picture, what waits beyond it can only unfold in the soft language of wonder as you step past the limits of familiar ground. The planet beneath you begins to stretch in ways your senses were never meant to follow. It doesn't feel like a surface anymore. It feels like a curve, a gentle, impossible bend slipping just beyond the edge of memory. Think about standing on a shoreline. Waves roll in with a steady rhythm, and at the far end of the water, the horizon draws a perfect line across the sky. It feels close, manageable, a place you could reach if you simply kept walking long enough. But the horizon is not a destination. It's a boundary created by the planet itself, a reminder that the world is quietly curving away from you. Now imagine rising just a little higher, not into space yet, just above the tallest buildings, where cities flatten into patterns, and rivers thread through the landscape like slow-moving silver. From here, distance changes flavour. It becomes smoother, wider, less personal. What once felt like a long drive now shrinks into a thin line across the earth. Lift yourself higher still, as if carried by a gentle wind into the quiet sky. The planet rounds beneath you, not all at once, but gradually, a soft arc forming under clouds that drift like wandering thoughts. There are no footsteps at this scale, no familiar markers to measure against, only the gradual realization that the world you know is far larger than anything your instincts can hold, and this shift matters. It is the mind adjusting, slowly loosening its grip on human-sized distances, making room for scales that don't fit inside a single lifetime. The curve of Earth is the first whisper, that the universe will not bend to our intuition. It asks us to soften our sense of size, to let go of what feels knowable, because once we've seen our own world grow wide, we're finally ready to step gently beyond it. When we finally lift ourselves completely off the earth, the familiar world falls away in a silence so complete, it almost feels like a held breath. There is no wind, no echo, no rising or falling of sound, only the steady, unhurried widening of the space between you and home. The moon sits ahead of you like a soft lantern, quiet and pale, its light more like a memory than a glow. You've seen it countless times from your window, but distance changes everything. From here, the moon is not a symbol or a comforting shape in the sky. It is a destination, one that takes days for even light to cross. Imagine drifting toward it, not rushing, not racing, just moving through the dark the way a leaf might drift across still water. The earth shrinks behind you, its bright blues and soft whites folding into a small glowing sphere. Every hour the space grows deeper, every mile the silence grows thicker. You are no longer travelling across a world, you are travelling between worlds. This is the first distance that truly resists human intuition. 3 days sounds simple enough, yet in the cold quiet of space, time stretches into something unfamiliar. Each moment feels longer, each mile feels wider. Your mind searches for markers. A tree, a ridge, a line on the ground, but finds none. Everything is motion without reference. And then comes the realization, you are not moving through emptiness. You are moving through scale, a scale so gentle and vast that even a journey to our closest neighbour feels like slipping across the surface of a dream. This is where distance begins to breathe differently, where the universe shows in the softest possible way that even nearby is unimaginably far. The moon grows quietly in front of you, no longer a small coin pinned to the sky, but a world with shadows, ridges, and plains washed silver under distant sunlight. Its presence feels heavier now, as if the silence around it carries its own kind of gravity. Up close, the distance you've crossed becomes clearer. You begin to understand that even this nearest world is separated from Earth by a gulf that can't be walked, can't be driven, can't be crossed by any instinct you were born with. It is a distance you must surrender to, not comprehend. Look back for a moment. The Earth hangs behind you, a glowing sphere with soft weather spirals, and oceans folded into deep blues. From here it looks fragile, like a memory suspended in the dark. Every city, every life, every story you've ever known rests on that small floating circle, and yet it is already too far to touch. Turn forward again. The moon waits without urgency. It does not call you closer, It simply sits in its orbit, patient and pale, as if time itself slows in its presence. The light that falls across its surface left the sun moments ago, carrying the shape of craters and valleys in quiet, unwavering beams. This is the first moment when space feels real, not as an idea, but as a place defined not by motion, but by absence, not by paths, but by the immeasurable distance between worlds. And in this stillness, a subtle understanding begins to form. If the moon requires days to reach, and if Earth already feels remote, what does that say about the star that shines on them both? The sun has always felt close, warm on your skin, bright in your eyes, a presence so constant that it becomes part of the background of your life, a gentle certainty you never question. But in space drifting far from Earth and farther still from the moon, that certainty begins to unravel. The sun no longer feels near. It hangs ahead of you like a distant fire, glowing without flicker, suspended in a darkness too deep for comparison. Its light seems steady, but only because you're used to seeing its arrival, not its journey. Imagine following a single ray of sunlight. It slips away from the sun in absolute silence, moving with a calm purpose, crossing the void with no resistance, no wind to slow it, no matter to greet it, just a long uninterrupted path toward the place you call home. And it takes its time, not long to the universe, but long to us. 8 gentle minutes, 8 minutes in which the earth continues to turn. Clouds drift above oceans, and people go about their days without realizing that the warmth touching their face is not from the present, but from the past. Light becomes a messenger here, carrying the sun's story across a gulf so wide it already dwarfs everything you've experienced so far. Even the moon's distance shrinks in the shadow of this span. It is the first step into a scale, where time and space blend softly into one another, each dependent on the other to be understood. And in this slow measured realization that the sun is minutes away, not moments, a deeper question emerges. If 8 minutes of light creates such an enormous distance, what happens when light keeps travelling? For hours, for days, for years. For most of your life, the sun has never seemed far away. It rises, it warms, it follows you through every season. Like a gentle companion you don't need to think about. Its presence feels immediate, a constant comforting light that arrives the moment you open your eyes. But now drifting far from Earth and the moon, you begin to sense the truth hidden behind that familiarity. The sun is no longer a warm glow in the sky. It hangs alone in a deep, motionless dark, a sphere of fire impossibly distant, its heat softened by the void that surrounds it. It feels close only because its light travels fast, not because the sun itself is near. Imagine pausing here, letting your gaze settle on that distant flame. The space between you and the sun is almost entirely empty, a silent gulf that light must cross. Every moment, without rest, nothing bridges that distance except the thin thread of illumination that reaches you 8 minutes after it begins its journey. From here you can finally sense the scale. The sun is a neighbour, yet not a nearby one. It is close enough to shape your days, but far enough that its light is always late, always carrying a story from the past. Its warmth is a memory delivered across space, not a touch you feel in real time, and this changes something subtle inside you. It's the moment you realize that the universe doesn't operate on human immediacy. Everything you see is shifted, delayed, stretched across distances too large for your instincts to follow. Even your star, so bright, so present, lives at a distance that bends your sense of now. This is the threshold where the sun stops being familiar and becomes cosmic, a step in scale that opens the door to something even stranger. Light feels instant. It fills your room the moment you open the curtains, slides gently across your hands, and warms the air without delay. To your senses it behaves like something that simply is, present the moment you look for it. But out here, suspended between the moon and the sun, You begin to see light differently, not as a glow, not as brightness, but as a traveller, a quiet messenger crossing an enormous sea of darkness, with a patience deeper than anything on Earth. Imagine a single beam of sunlight leaving the star. It slips away from the surface with no sound, and no sign of struggle, moving smoothly into the empty space ahead. There are no obstacles to weave around, no turns to make, no landscape to pass through, just a long uninterrupted journey through a silence thick enough to feel ancient, for light distance is not a path, it is a duration, a stretch of time it must inhabit before reaching anything at all. Every photon carries the memory of where it came from, and the space between moments is carved into the shape of that memory. Here, drifting in the dark, you can sense how profound that is. Nothing else in the universe moves with such grace. Nothing else bridges such vastness, without slowing, without aging, without ever stopping to rest. Light simply goes, steady, unwavering, as if the universe itself whispered forward, and it obeyed, and the distance it crosses is not something your intuition can hold. It must be felt in the rhythm of time, in the quiet understanding that even something so swift still needs minutes to reach your eyes from the sun. This is where the nature of light unfolds, not as brightness, but as motion through unimaginable space. As the idea of light begins to settle, something soft shifts in your understanding. Distance no longer feels like a length, not a stretch of road, not a line on a map, not even the quiet gulf between Earth and the Moon. Instead, it begins to feel like time, because for light space isn't crossed by movement you can follow. There is no sound of footsteps, no trail to trace, no sense of one moment being closer than the next. Light exists in a world where distance and time are simply different ways of describing the same gentle passage. Think about that 8-minute journey from the sun. To your mind, 8 minutes is brief, the length of a warm shower, a small break between tasks, a short pause before the next part of your day begins. But for light, those 8 minutes hold an entire expanse of space, an ocean so wide that even something moving at the highest allowed speed must glide through it with patience. Extend that feeling a little farther. Imagine light travelling for an hour, 60 slow minutes drifting through the dark. In that time the earth turns slightly, clouds reshape themselves, people wake, people sleep, and the photon continues its silent journey. Without ever noticing the world it will eventually reach, push it farther still. Imagine a full day, 24 hours of uninterrupted motion, carrying information across a span so large that your senses cannot follow. A day becomes a distance becomes a day, time stretches gently into space, and space folds quietly into time, and this is where your intuition begins to adapt. You start to sense that if minutes and hours can contain such enormous spans of emptiness, then a year, an entire orbit of seasons, memories, and moments must represent a scale far beyond anything human. This is the threshold where the light year stops being a strange phrase and begins to feel like a natural idea. A light year does not begin as a number, it begins as a feeling, a slow dawning that ordinary distance is no longer enough, that the scales you've carried all your life cannot stretch far enough to hold what the universe quietly contains. By now you've watched light take minutes to cross the space between you and the sun. You've imagined it drifting for an hour, for a day, sliding through the dark with unwavering calm. The mind strains, but gently, as if trying to follow a melody played just beyond hearing. And then the question forms, if a minute holds such vastness, and an hour holds even more, what happens when light is allowed to travel through the full rhythm of a year? Imagine that year, seasons shifting across Earth, leaves reddening, falling and returning again, oceans breathing in long, slow tides, people growing, aging, changing their lives in countless small ways. And through all of it, a single beam of light continues forward, never slowing, never bending from fatigue, never once looking back. It is a journey that lasts the length of your memories, your routines, your private hopes and quiet disappointments. The world turns beneath you, days blur into nights, and that one thread of illumination drifts through space with the patience of something ancient. When it finally finishes its year-long passage, you realize that the distance it has crossed is too immense for maps, too large for human intuition, too vast for anything except time itself. To contain the measurement, this is the moment a new unit becomes necessary, not invented out of complexity, but born from simplicity, from the gentle truth that the universe is too wide for ordinary meters and miles. A light year is not a length, it is the echo of a year, carried across the dark. Now that the light year has taken shape, softly, slowly, like a new horizon rising in the mind, the scale it represents begins to reveal itself, not abruptly, not with shock, but with a quiet widening of perspective that feels almost like the deep inhale before a long journey. Imagine holding the idea in your hands. The distance light travels in one full year, not in steps, not in roads, not in any measure your instincts were built to understand. You try to picture it, but the image slips away, too large to settle into a single thought, so you approach it gently instead. You let the immensity unfold the way dawn spreads across a landscape, not all at once, but in slow, deliberate layers. First the awareness that even the sun's 8-minute span is only the smallest fraction of this new scale, then the sense that every hour of light's journey could wrap around your imagination and still leave room to grow, and finally, the soft realization that a year is not just a duration, it's an expanse. Try to feel it rather than understand it. A year of drifting through the dark, where nothing interrupts the motion, nothing breaks the silence, nothing marks the passing of time, except the subtle memory of where the light began. It is distance turning into patience, patience turning into magnitude, magnitude turning into something almost unfathomable. This is the first true glimpse of immensity, a scale that dissolves all familiar measures, not by overpowering them, but by stretching gently beyond their limits, until they simply fade from relevance. You're no longer dealing with miles or kilometers, you're dealing with a concept that feels as large as thought itself, and this is only the beginning. A single light year is vast, but the universe quietly holds distances that make even this feel small. To understand the light year more deeply, you have to let it stretch through your imagination, one moment at a time, not as a number, not as a fact, but as an experience unfolding at the pace of a quiet year. Picture the beginning. A single point of light leaves its source, slipping into the dark with the soft confidence of something that has crossed the void 1,000,000 times before. It carries no weight, no sound, no pressure, just a memory of where it came from, and the certainty of the path ahead. Now let the days pass, day after day, while people wake and sleep, while cities breathe and quiet themselves again at night, while storms gather and dissolve over distant oceans. That tiny thread of light continues forward, without ever faltering. It does not rush, it does not tire. Its journey is steady, woven into the deep fabric of space. Let the months move by, leaves turn and fall, snow settles, the world cycles through its familiar moods, but none of it touches the photon drifting outward. It has no seasons, no sense of change, only motion, gentle and uninterrupted. And finally the year completes itself. A full loop of Earth around the sun, countless small moments collected into memory, yet for that single beam of light, it was simply the continuation of the same quiet journey, stretching across a distance so immense that the human mind cannot truly hold it, only feel the softness of its scale. This is what makes the light year so subtle, so difficult, so quietly overwhelming. It isn't the measurement of length, it's the measure of how far a constant unwavering traveller can drift through the dark, while an entire year unfolds back home. Once you've let a single light year settle into your imagination, something gentle begins to happen. All the familiar measures you grew up with, steps, miles, hours, even the quiet certainty of a horizon, start to lose their shape. Not suddenly, not violently, they simply soften, as if distance itself is dissolving into a wider, quieter world. Consider how your mind usually works. It reaches for comparisons, a long road, a cross-country flight, perhaps even the time it takes to circle the Earth. But none of these images hold. They crumble the moment you try to place them next to the idea of light travelling for 12 steady months. Your intuition looks for something to anchor to, yet finds nothing familiar enough to trust. So it pauses, and in that pause, a new sense of scale begins to grow. A scale built not on experience, but on acceptance. You're no longer trying to imagine the whole distance at once. You're allowing it to exist beyond your grasp, letting it unfold in layers. The way a landscape reveals itself through morning fog, this quiet collapse of old measures, is not a failure of understanding. It's the mind adjusting to something that was never meant to fit inside human instinct. A light year is too large for memory, too long for footsteps, too wide for the senses you use to navigate daily life. And so your intuition relaxes, releasing its grip on the familiar to make room for the vast. In that release, a gentle clarity appears. You begin to sense distance, not as something you must picture, but as something you must feel, a presence that stretches softly across time and leans quietly into eternity. And once this shift settles, you're finally ready to step beyond the single light year, into distances that make even this seem like the smallest beginning. With your intuition softened, the universe begins to open in a new way, not as a sudden revelation, but as a slow, steady widening, a feeling that there is more space behind every thought than you once believed. A single light year already feels immense, yet it is only the first rung on a ladder that rises far beyond the reach of instinct. So instead of trying to leap upward, you let yourself climb gently, one quiet step at a time. Imagine adding light days together. You stack them the way you might stack quiet moments. A sunrise here, a calm afternoon there, a handful of nights spent listening to the soft hum of your own thoughts. Each day of light's travel becomes a small tile, in a mosaic too large to see all at once. Then imagine collecting light weeks, 7 days of drifting through the dark, each carrying its own subtle weight. Weeks turn into months, months stretch into seasons. Still the photon glides on, unhurried, untroubled, moving through a silence so vast, it feels like the background rhythm of the universe. And as you let these pieces accumulate, you begin to sense something important. The scale isn't overwhelming when approached slowly. It becomes almost meditative, like breathing in longer and longer cycles until your thoughts match the pace of the cosmos. This is the heart of the soothing cosmic scale. You rise by accepting, not by understanding. You expand your sense of size, the way you stretch a quiet imagination, letting it loosen, soften, and make room for distances that no longer resemble anything on Earth. By the time you reach a full light year again, it no longer feels like an impossible height. It feels like a milestone, the first step on a far longer staircase that leads deeper into the structure of the universe. As you move farther along this widening ladder of distance, a subtle transformation begins to unfold. The universe stops presenting itself as a place filled with objects separated by emptiness, and instead begins to feel like a vast continuous fabric in which everything is quietly connected across unimaginable spans. On Earth, distance is defined by landmarks. A hill here, a building there, a coastline curving against the sea. But out here, as scales stretch beyond light months and drift softly toward light years, those markers vanish. There are no roads, no borders, no signs to orient yourself. Space stops looking like a place, and begins to resemble a texture. Imagine floating within that texture. You see stars scattered across the dark, each one a tiny ripple in a silent sea. They look close, like you could reach out and brush your fingers against their faint shimmer. But your intuition has already learned that appearances are gentle illusions. Even the nearest of those distant sparks may be tens or hundreds of light years away. Your eyes hold their glow, but your mind now senses the depth behind it, a depth layered across time, as much as space, and something else changes too. You begin to lose the feeling that you are moving towards something. There is no sense of progress, no approach, no nearing of a destination. Distance at this scale is not a journey, it's an atmosphere, a presence that surrounds you, rather than something you cross. It becomes soft, almost serene, like drifting through a dreamscape, where direction no longer matters. This shift is the quiet beginning of how astronomers see the cosmos, not as isolated points, but as luminous echoes scattered across a tapestry so vast, your mind can only understand it through calm acceptance. And when space stops looking like space, you're ready for the next threshold, the moment when distance becomes so great that even light years must gather in clusters to describe what lies ahead. In this softened view of space, where distance feels more like a texture than a path, the stars begin to take on a new presence. They no longer seem like decorations pinned to the sky, but distant suns, each carrying their own quiet worlds, their own histories, their own long stories whispered across the dark. And yet for all their brilliance, the nearest of them remains impossibly far. Imagine looking toward Proxima Centauri, our closest stellar neighbour. To your eyes it is only a faint point of light, barely distinguishable from the countless others resting on the night's canvas. But now that you've begun to understand what a single light year truly represents, you can sense the immensity hidden behind that tiny glow. More than 4 years, 4 full orbits of Earth around the Sun, for a single beam of light to reach us from that modest red star. Let that sink in gently. 4 years of drifting light, 4 years of seasons passing, of memories forming, of entire chapters of life unfolding, and all the while, a photon travels steadily across the empty gulf, between one star and the next. This is where the scale of the cosmos begins to feel personal, not because you can comprehend the distance, but because you can feel its weight. Through the rhythm of time itself, you know what 4 years feels like. You've lived inside that stretch of moments, and now you understand that such a span is only the minimum distance between stars that sit right next to each other on the grand map of the galaxy. Look around you. Every star in view, no matter how bright or familiar, is separated from its neighbours by corridors of emptiness measured in years of light's patient travel. They appear close only because the night sky folds a 3-dimensional universe into a single delicate sheet of darkness, and in this realization, something quiet settles into your awareness. The stars are not scattered nearby. They are islands in an ocean so vast that even the nearest shore is unimaginably distant. The closer stars have shown their distances softly, patiently, each one sitting years of light apart from the next. But when you lift your gaze beyond these nearby suns, something far larger begins to rise into view. Not suddenly, not as a leap, more like a slow blooming. In the dark, the Milky Way appears first as a pale river, a faint band stretched across the night sky, like brushed silver on velvet. From Earth it looks delicate, almost fragile, a soft glow that feels close enough to touch. If only the world were a little quieter. But now drifting through the vastness between stars, you begin to sense what that glow truly is. Not a cloud, not a mist, but the light of hundreds of billions of suns, each separated from the next by years and years of patient distance. The galaxy is not a single object. It is a collection of impossibly distant islands, woven together into one gentle spiral. Imagine hovering far enough away to see this spiral take shape, its arms curl softly, as if the galaxy were turning in slow motion, breathing through a rhythm older than time itself. Every star you've ever seen, bright, faint, familiar, forgotten, is only one tiny point within this quiet storm of light, and yet nothing inside it touches. The stars drift apart, held by gravity's subtle pull, yet kept distant by the vastness of space. Even here at the scale of a galaxy, emptiness rules. Distances stretch into light years. Light years accumulate into thousands, and thousands gather into tens of thousands before the Milky Way's true size begins to make sense. But don't try to picture it all at once. Let the idea expand slowly, the way dawn spreads across a landscape, revealing its contours in soft, patient light. A galaxy is not meant to be understood in a single thought. It is meant to be approached gently, with the same calm acceptance that has carried you through each previous scale. As the Milky Way settles into view, its soft arms drifting outward like quiet tides, your sense of scale shifts once more. The galaxy no longer feels like a distant smear of light. It begins to resemble something almost familiar, like a vast ancient city, seen from far above on a silent night. Imagine drifting closer, not enough to lose the grand shape, but just enough to sense the depth within it. Each bright knot becomes a neighborhood of suns. Each faint shimmer becomes a distant district. The dark lanes threading between the arms are not empty, they are avenues carved by dust and time. Soft corridors where light struggles to pass, but still finds its way through. You begin to notice patterns, clusters where stars gather in loose families, streams of old suns drifting on quiet orbits, regions where newborn light pushes gently against the darkness, as if taking its first breath. The galaxy is alive with motion, but the motion is slow, so slow that a single turn takes hundreds of millions of years. Let that settle. Entire human histories, every story ever told, every generation that has lived and disappeared, all of it fits into a fraction of one gentle rotation of this cosmic city. The galaxy moves with a patience far beyond anything the human mind was built to feel, and the distances within it begin to blur your old sense of space again. Stars that seem neighbours, maybe dozens of light years apart, regions that look connected, maybe separated by gulfs, where only dust drifts in silence. Everything shines together, yet everything remains far, held in place by a gravity as soft as it is relentless. From this vantage, the Milky Way becomes more than a spiral. It becomes a community of distant lights, each following its own slow path, woven into a structure so grand that it can only be understood through calm, patient seeing. When you finally grow comfortable with the slow drifting immensity of the Milky Way, another realization begins to rise, soft at first, like a faint glow behind distant hills. Your galaxy, vast as it is not alone, far beyond its curling arms, across distances so deep they feel more like time than space. Other spirals begin to appear, some small, some enormous, some tilted just enough to reveal the quiet geometry of their swirling forms. They shine not as points, but as entire worlds folded into a single faint shimmer, like lanterns drifting across an endless sea. Imagine floating in the stillness between galaxies, the Milky Way behind you, another great spiral ahead, and countless more scattered across the dark. In all directions, each is a city of stars, built from billions of suns, held together by gravity's patient hand, and each is separated from its neighbours by gulfs so vast that even light requires millions of years to cross them. But don't rush to grasp that number. Let it come to you the way all cosmic scales do, slowly, gently, as a feeling rather than a fact. In this intergalactic quiet, you sense something profound. Galaxies do not cluster together like towns. They drift like islands on a dark ocean, close enough to see, too far to touch. The space between them is not empty, but so calm and thin that even dust struggles to exist. And yet despite this enormous separation, their light finds you. It travels across the void for millions of years, arriving as a soft whisper of what those galaxies once were. You never see them as they are, only as they used to be, their glow stretched across ages. To reach your eyes, this is the first gentle glimpse of the universe beyond the Milky Way, a realm where galaxies float like quiet lanterns, each carrying the memory of ancient light. As more galaxies drift into view, spirals, ellipses, faint smudges shaped by time, a quiet pattern begins to emerge. Not loud, not obvious, more like the gentle way waves align. When seen from far above, a rhythm spread across millions of light years, too large for the eye to catch at first glance. From your vantage in intergalactic space, you begin to sense how these distant cities of stars do not scatter randomly. They gather in loose associations, curving around invisible shapes, forming threads that stretch so far they resemble rivers of faint light, winding through the darkness. Imagine drifting near one of these threads. You wouldn't see a solid structure. You would see galaxies, hundreds of them, spaced far apart, each shining with the memory of ancient suns, yet all gently aligned, like lanterns following the same quiet current. Gravity, soft but persistent, guides their slow assembly over billions of years. Between these threads lie great hollows, regions where almost nothing lives, not empty in the dramatic sense, but empty in the cosmic sense. Vast expanses where a single galaxy might wander alone for ages. These voids are so wide that even light can spend hundreds of millions of years crossing from one side to the other. Let that idea settle. A distance measured not in miles, not in years, but in the lifetimes of entire civilizations. And yet from afar, all these threads and hollows and clusters blend into a faint cosmic map, a web whose structure only becomes clear when seen across unimaginable scales. It is the universe's handwriting, quiet and sprawling, drawn in the soft glow of galaxies, spread across the deep. This is where you begin to understand that galaxies are not isolated wonders. They are part of a much larger pattern, a pattern written with time, gravity, and the patient drift of light itself. At this scale, where galaxies stretch into rivers and voids widen into vast quiet oceans, something even more delicate begins to appear. A structure so large, so gently woven, that it only reveals itself when you let your imagination drift far beyond the limits of instinct. The universe starts to resemble a web, not a rigid one, not sharp or geometric, but soft, a lace of faint luminosity, spread across unimaginable distances. Each strand is made of galaxies, each knot is a cluster, each shimmering arc is a bridge, where gravity has drawn matter together over billions of years. Imagine drifting near one of these intersections. You would see galaxies gathered like lights in a distant square, each one far apart, yet organized by a pattern too large to be created by chance. The space between them would feel thinner somehow, as if the web's structure held a quiet tension that shapes everything around it. Move farther along a filament, and the scene changes again. Galaxies become more spaced, their glow faint and patient, like lanterns marking a road that stretches across the dark, farther than thought can follow. Gravity pulls softly here, never demanding, never rushing, only guiding with the slow certainty of deep time. And then without warning, the filament widens and fades, opening into another immense void, a region where almost nothing shines, where light must travel hundreds of millions of years before meeting anything at all. These empty realms are just as much a part of the universe as the bright threads that border them. Let the idea settle like dust, a universe built not on fullness, but on contrast. light and darkness, presence and absence, woven together into a pattern that feels both fragile and eternal. From this vantage, the cosmic web does not feel like a structure. It feels like a breath, a slow inhaling and exhaling of galaxies across the deep. When you follow the cosmic web far enough, along its glowing threads, through its vast hollows, across the silent spans where galaxies drift like memories, a final perspective begins to take shape. Not abruptly, not with grandeur, more like the soft widening of vision after a long deep breath. The universe viewed all at once does not resemble the night sky you grew up with. It is not a dome of stars, nor a sea of distant suns. It is a structure, a quiet, intricate lattice, spread across billions of light years, held together by gravity's patient pull, and the echo of ancient light. Imagine pulling back until even the largest galaxy clusters become faint points of brightness. The grand spirals shrink first, their arms folding into tiny swirls. Then the clusters fade into subtle glimmers, barely distinguishable from the dark around them. Finally, the cosmic web itself reveals its true form, a sprawling network of light, woven through emptiness, so vast it feels almost weightless. From here you can see everything at once, the bright filaments where galaxies gather, like beads on a thread, the immense voids, spanning hundreds of millions of light years, still and quiet as a held breath, and the delicate balance between structure and emptiness that gives the universe its shape. But something deeper emerges too, the realization that every point of light, every galaxy, every cluster, every swirling arm, contains its own history of stars, its own families of worlds, its own slow and patient unfolding. Across billions of years, you're no longer seeing distances, you're seeing relationships, how light, gravity and time have arranged themselves into a mosaic too large for instinct, but perfect for wonder. Let the image rest for a moment. The universe in its entirety is neither chaos nor order, but something softer, a vast drifting harmony, written across the dark. From this highest vantage, where galaxies shrink into glimmers and the cosmic web folds into a single delicate pattern, your attention returns to the quiet traveller that carried you here from the beginning, light, soft, patient, unhurried through the vastness. It feels almost impossible now that something so small, so weightless, could move across a universe so wide that even clusters and superclusters become faint points in its span. Yet light does not seem intimidated. It moves with a confidence born of natural law, slipping through every gulf, every corridor of dark, as if the universe was simply a long, open path, waiting to be crossed. Imagine a photon leaving a distant galaxy. At the edge of this cosmic web, it drifts through a region where galaxies are spaced farther apart. Then entire clusters within the Milky Way, millions of years pass, filaments thin, voids open like slow silent breaths. Still the photon moves forward, steady as a heartbeat. Then tens of millions of years, entire civilizations could rise and vanish on faraway planets without ever knowing the beam of light that has been travelling since long before their first sunrise. It glides through supercluster boundaries, past wandering galaxies, through hollows so wide that time itself feels stretched thin, and still forward. Hundreds of millions of years now, continents on Earth shift, stars in the Milky Way rearrange, even the galaxy itself turns a fraction of a gentle rotation. But for the photon, these are only background changes, passing quietly as it continues its ancient journey. When at last this traveller reaches you, landing softly in your eye or settling into a telescope's mirror, you are not seeing distance anymore. You are seeing age. You are seeing a message sent across the entire architecture of the cosmos, carrying the memory of a place as it was when light first left it. In this way, the universe does not just expand around you, It expands backward through time every time you look up. The deeper you move into this understanding, the more a quiet truth begins to settle inside you. The universe you see is not a landscape of distance. It is a mosaic of moments, a collection of ages layered across the sky, like soft reflections in a drifting pool. When you look at a nearby star, you're seeing it as it was a few years ago. When you look at a distant spiral, you're seeing it as it was millions of years ago. And when your eyes touch the faintest glimmer at the edge of the visible universe, you are witnessing a memory older than Earth itself. Distance has dissolved. Only time remains. Imagine letting this thought unfold slowly. Every point of light becomes a doorway into a moment long gone. Some doorways lead to recent chapters, stories still warm with the echo of the present. Others open into eras so ancient that the galaxies you see may have changed completely, their shapes reshaped by gravity, their stars reborn into new generations, and yet the light reaches you with the softness of something preserved, not frozen, not static, but carried gently across billions of years, without hurry and without loss of memory. This is the strange gift of the cosmos. You can stand in one moment of time and watch countless others unfold around you. The night sky becomes a quiet library, each star a page, each galaxy a chapter, each faint shimmer a story that left its source long before your world existed. Let that settle for a moment. When you gaze upward, you are not looking into space. You are looking into the past, a past written in light, patiently travelling to reach you. And as this realization deepens, another truth rises softly behind it. If light reveals the past, then the structure of time itself must be woven into the fabric of the universe. Once you begin to see the sky as layers of time, the universe shifts again, quietly, softly, as if a new dimension has unfolded. Without a sound, time stops feeling like something that moves forward. It becomes something you can look across, a terrain, a landscape, a gentle slope of moments, stretching from the present into ages so distant they feel more like dreams than history. Imagine standing on a high overlook at dusk. Below you lies a valley, with rivers bending through the light, fields fading into shadow, and distant hills resting in the blush of evening. Now imagine that instead of land, what you see is time, near moments bright and vivid, far moments dim and ancient, their contours softened by distance, but still present in the quiet. This is what the universe has become for you. The nearest stars form the foothills of this temporal terrain. Their light is young, barely aged, still warm with the imprint of the present. Farther out, the spirals and clusters become the distant hills, their light carrying stories older than humanity, and at the farthest edge, where the faintest glow barely reaches you, lies a horizon of time so remote that even the universe itself had not yet taken its full shape. When that light began to travel, let that image settle. You are not just standing in space, you are standing in the middle of a vast layered history, a history you can see but never touch, a history that arrives gently, photon by photon, from the deep, and as time becomes a landscape, your place within it becomes clearer. You are a single moment, in a tapestry woven from billions of years, a brief pause in an endlessly unfolding story. But this realization is not heavy, it is calming. A reminder that everything you see has been traveling toward you with quiet purpose, and that your moment too will someday join the glow. As this layered world of moments settles around you, the universe begins to reveal one last quiet transformation. Not an ending, not a boundary, more like a soft thinning, as if time itself becomes lighter. The farther out you look, the distant galaxies fade first. Their spirals dim, their shapes blur, their colours drift toward a gentle red, as their ancient light stretches through the widening fabric of space. It isn't a dramatic shift, it's subtle, the way a distant sound grows softer as you walk away from it. Then something stranger appears. There is a point where even the oldest galaxies no longer shine clearly. Their light is stretched so far, so thin, that it becomes a whisper, a glow that barely reaches you. Across the deep, imagine standing at the edge of a great plain at night. Nearby the land is detailed and sharp. Farther away the hills blur into shadow, and beyond that the horizon dissolves into a soft, indistinct haze. This is how the universe looks at its limits, not because something blocks your view, but because time itself begins to lose its grip on the light travelling through it. The farthest glow you can see is not merely distant, it is ancient beyond measure, born when the universe was young, before galaxies fully formed, before stars settled into the patterns they follow now. You are witnessing an era so remote that its light has spent almost the entire age of existence, crossing the void to reach you. Let that feeling unfold slowly. The edge of the visible universe is not a wall. It is a horizon of time, a boundary drawn by how far light can travel, since the first moment anything could shine. You're looking not outward, but backward, toward a moment when the cosmos was new, and the darkness was still learning how to hold the first faint traces of light. As you gaze toward that thinning horizon, the place where light grows faint and time stretches almost beyond recognition, a final question begins to rise softly in your mind. Not sharp, not urgent, just a quiet curiosity. What lies beyond the oldest light we can see? The answer comes not as an image, but as a feeling, a sense of standing at the shoreline of a vast and ancient ocean, knowing that the water before you has carried countless stories, yet still hides the earliest chapters. Beneath its calm surface, imagine drifting just a little farther. The galaxies fade into whispers. Their shapes dissolve, their colours soften, until only the faintest glow remains, like embers hidden beneath deep ash. This is not darkness. It is the memory of a universe, still learning how to shine. The light reaching you here is older than any star, a glow from a time before spirals existed, before clusters gathered, before galaxies settled into their patient dance. It comes from an era when the universe was a warm, expanding fog, slowly cooling into clarity. Let that idea unfold gently. You are looking at the universe, not in space, but in infancy, a time when matter had not yet chosen its places, when light wandered freely, when the cosmic web was only a hint of shapes yet to form. Everything familiar, stars, planets, clusters, spirals, lies far ahead of this moment. And yet here, in this softened glow, is the root of it all. The first light the universe ever released, a faint echo of beginnings that took billions of years to grow into the structure you now understand. This horizon is not a boundary, it is a cradle. The earliest chapter still visible, written in light so old, it barely carries its own memory. From that cradle of softened glow, a new understanding begins to rise, gentle, unhurried, like the first warmth of morning spreading over quiet fields. You are standing at the threshold of the universe's earliest visible moment, a time when light itself was still learning how to move through space. Imagine the cosmos then, not stars, not galaxies, not the elegant spirals and wide filaments you have slowly grown familiar with. Just a warm fog, thick glowing, made of particles too crowded to let light wander freely. It was a universe without distance, without clarity, without the quiet separations that now shape everything. For hundreds of thousands of years, light tried to slip through this haze, but was caught again and again, bounced between particles, like a soft lost echo. It could not travel, it could only wait. Then gently, almost imperceptibly, the fog thinned, the universe cooled, matter loosened its grip, and for the first time, light was free to drift, free to move without obstruction, free to begin the journey that would someday reach your eyes. This moment, this quiet release, is the oldest light you can see, not because it is the beginning of everything, but because it is the first chapter, the universe allowed to remain visible. Everything before it is hidden behind the fog, a curtain drawn by nature's earliest conditions. Let that settle. The faint glow that fills the universe today is the aftertaste of that release, a soft, stretched whisper of ancient warmth, still drifting through space, nearly 14 billion years later. When you look toward the furthest horizon, you are seeing the sky as it once was when the cosmos was barely able to let its own light escape. It is not brightness, it is not clarity, it is memory, old, patient, and endlessly gentle. From that first breath of clarity, when light finally slipped free of the warm, crowded fog, the universe began a slow transformation, not sudden, not dramatic, more like the soft settling of snow after a long, quiet storm. With the fog gone, space opened, light could travel without being trapped, and in that freedom, the earliest patterns began to form, tiny fluctuations, barely noticeable, ripples in the ancient haze, where matter was ever so slightly more crowded than its surroundings. Imagine these ripples as gentle hills in an otherwise flat landscape. Nothing sharp, nothing towering, just small rises, subtle enough to overlook, yet destined to become the scaffolding of everything to come. Over millions of years, those tiny hills deepened, gravity soft and patient, pulled matter toward them, not quickly, not forcefully, but persistently, the way a slow river shapes its banks, grain by grain. As matter gathered, the universe grew more textured. Small clumps formed first, the seeds of future stars, then larger gatherings, the ancestors of galaxies, the cosmic web, which now stretches across billions of light years, began here as delicate hints, barely their outlines, drawn in the thinnest strokes of gravity. Let that image rest. From a fog where no light could move, to ripples too faint for the eye, to structures that would one day hold entire cities of stars. This is how quietly the universe learned its shape. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, just the slow unfolding of patterns written into the earliest moments of creation. And every distant galaxy you see today, every spiral, every cluster, every soft lantern floating across the dark, began as one of those tiny ancient ripples. From those ancient ripples, soft rises in the universe still cooling, something extraordinary begins to unfold, not all at once, not in brilliance, but in a slow gathering, a gentle tightening of matter that has waited hundreds of millions of years to find its place. At first these gatherings are small, clouds of hydrogen drifting closer, circle by circle, their motions shaped by gravity's patient pull. There is no light yet, no warmth, just a quiet deepening of density, like mist settling into the lowest parts of a valley. As evening falls, imagine these clouds growing heavier, the particles inside them draw nearer with each passing moment, their collisions becoming more frequent, their dance more intimate. The cloud shrinks, slowly compressing under its own weight, until its center grows warm from nothing more than the pressure of being held too tightly. Then comes the turning point. A warmth becomes heat, heat becomes fire, and in a moment both small and monumental, the very first star ignites, a gentle flare in a universe long wrapped in darkness, not bright by modern standards, not large, but new, the first light created by matter itself, rather than by the fading echo of the early cosmos. Let that settle gently. Before this moment, the universe knew only a dim afterglow, soft stretched light from its earliest years. But now, a spark shines, not from the past, but from the present. A new chapter begins. Written in starlight, these first stars are immense, burning hot and fast, exhausting their fuel in spans so short that they vanish, almost as soon as they appear, yet their brief lives reshape everything. They forge new elements, send out winds that sculpt the darkness, and leave behind the seeds for future generations of stars more familiar to you. In the quiet after the fog, the universe has taken another step, from darkness to the first true points of light as the first stars flare into existence. Brief bright, like sparks rising from a quiet fire, the universe begins a new chapter. The darkness is no longer empty, it carries scattered points of light, each born from the slow collapse of ancient clouds. But these stars do not remain alone for long. Their gravity reaches outward, soft but persistent, drawing neighbouring clouds and newborn stars into loose families. At first these gatherings are fragile, clusters drifting without clear shape, their motions uncertain, their boundaries undefined. Imagine watching them from afar. You would see small islands of light forming in the deep, each one a tiny community of the universe's earliest suns. Between them lies vast stillness, a calm sea of hydrogen and space, waiting for the next quiet pull of gravity to guide its motion. Over millions of years, these islands grow, more stars ignite, more clouds collapse. Gravity weaves their orbits into something steadier, something with rhythm, something with a center that slowly draws everything inward. Then comes another soft turning point. The gatherings begin to swirl, not rapidly, not chaotically, just a slow unfolding rotation, a gentle motion that hints at the spirals that will one day appear in countless forms across the cosmos. Let that image settle. From the faintest clusters to the earliest swirling clouds, the ancestors of galaxies begin to take shape. They are small, dwarfs compared to the giants you know today, but they carry the blueprint for everything to come as more stars are born and more clouds fall inward. These young protogalaxies brighten and grow, their centers thicken, their outskirts spread. They drift closer to one another, sometimes merging in slow, silent embraces that reshape their forms and ignite waves of new starlight. From these early gatherings, the first galaxies emerge, soft spirals, loose ellipses, and clusters of stars, still learning their place in the dark as those first proto-galaxies drift through the young universe. Their motions remain gentle, quiet spirals, soft gatherings, slow currents shaped by gravity's calm and ancient pull. Nothing about this era is rushed. Everything unfolds, the way a flower might open at night, petal by petal, without a sound. These early galaxies are small, fragile even, their stars young and bright, their shapes uncertain, yet they wander through a universe that is beginning to organize itself. Filaments thicken, voids deepen, and the faint web you saw from afar now becomes a guide, subtly steering each galaxy toward regions where others are gathering. Imagine drifting among them. You would see galaxies approach each other, not like objects on a collision course, but like slow-moving clouds whose edges blend long before their centers ever meet. When they finally touch, their stars pass through one another like gentle ghosts, their motions influenced not by impact but by shared gravity. These encounters do not break them apart. They help them grow, merge as trigger waves of new starlight, compressing ancient gas and lighting the darkness with fresh generations of stars. Little by little, galaxies become larger, brighter, more complex. Some stretch into spirals, arms unfurling like calm tides. Others settle into ovals, smooth and rounded, shaped by the many quiet interactions that guided their growth. Clusters begin to form, groups of galaxies loosely bound, moving together through space, the way families drift across wide open plains. Let that image settle. Galaxies are not solitary wonders. They are shaped by companionship, by slow dances across millions of years, by the subtle exchanges that occur whenever two drifting islands of light find themselves moving along the same thread of the cosmic web. This is how the great structures of the universe grow, not suddenly, not violently, but through the patient bloom of countless galactic families. Amid the slow bloom of these early galactic families, one gathering begins to stand out, not in brightness, not in size, but in the quiet steadiness with which it grows, a small cluster at first, a handful of proto-galaxies drifting together along a gentle filament of the cosmic web. This is the beginning of the Milky Way. It does not look familiar yet. There are no sweeping arms, no graceful spiral, no bright core glowing with the weight of 100 billion stars. Just a loose assembly of young restless clouds and newborn suns, their motions guided by the faint tug of shared gravity. Imagine watching it from afar. You'd see smaller galaxies, drawn slowly inward, some merging softly, some brushing past and stirring new waves of starlight, some breaking apart and leaving behind streams of stars that wrap around the growing whole like pale ribbons. Each encounter adds structure, each quiet merger thickens the central region, each gentle pass nudges the galaxy toward a more defined rhythm. Over hundreds of millions of years, a disk begins to form, thin at first, then wider, then slowly settling into the familiar swirl that you now recognize as home. Let that image linger. The Milky Way was not born in a single moment. It took shape through companionship, through countless soft interactions with smaller galaxies that arrived, one by one, across vast stretches of time. Even today, the remnants of those early mergers still drift around us as faint ghostly streams woven into the halo of our galaxy. And as the Milky Way grows, its arms unfurl more confidently, stars settle into their long orbits, clusters form, the disk thickens and expands until it becomes wide enough to hold entire generations of stars that will one day include the Sun itself. The galaxy you call home is the product of billions of years of quiet shaping, a slow patient emergence from the soft gatherings of the early universe. As the Milky Way settles into its widening spiral, its arms stretching like calm tides across the dark, a quieter transformation begins deep within one of those arms, not at the center where stars crowd so close their light blends into a soft glow, but far out in a gentle, quieter region where space has room to breathe. Here clouds drift more loosely, starlight is softer, gravity's pull is gentle enough to let gas and dust linger before they choose their shape. It is in one of these calm corridors, a small unassuming stretch of the galaxy, that something begins to change. Imagine a cloud of hydrogen, larger than any world you know, yet light enough to drift in silence. For millions of years it wanders, pulled slightly by passing stars, shaped gently by the spiral arm's slow rotation. Nothing about it suggests destiny. It is simply one cloud, among countless others. But then quietly, the balance shifts, a nearby cluster passes, its gravity nudging the cloud, just enough to disturb its stillness. Ripples form, the cloud thickens in places, parts of it grow heavier as matter drifts inward, grain by grain, circle by circle. This is not a sudden collapse. It is a settling, a slow giving in to the patient pull of gravity. The cloud cools, its center tightens, warmth grows from pressure alone, the earliest hint of a star waiting to be born. Let the image soften. Nothing in this moment feels grand. There are no flares, no spirals of flame, no violence, just the quiet beginning of a process that has repeated across the galaxy billions of times, yet this time it will lead to something deeply familiar. The conditions here are gentle, the surrounding space is calm, the density is just right, All the quiet ingredients of starbirth have gathered in the same place, settling slowly into the heart of this drifting cloud. Within this unremarkable corner of the Milky Way, a new star is preparing to open its eyes. As the quiet cloud continues to collapse, its center grows warmer, slowly, steadily, like a hidden ember beginning to breathe. There is no rush in this process. Gravity tightens its embrace, grain by grain, pulling matter inward until the cloud's heart becomes dense enough to change its nature. Imagine drifting nearby. You would see the cloud thicken, its edges dimming, its center glowing with a warmth too soft to be called light, but too bright to be called darkness. This glow deepens, drawn from nothing more than the pressure of countless particles pushed together in a space that can no longer hold them apart. And then after millions of years of quiet contraction, a new moment arrives. Not explosive, not violent, but decisive. The temperature at the cloud's core rises high enough for hydrogen to transform, fusing gently into helium, releasing energy that had been waiting in silence since the universe began. The star is born, not a giant, not a supernova in waiting, just a small warm sun, the kind of star the Milky Way creates by the billions, a star so ordinary that nothing about it seems destined for significance. Its light spreads slowly through the remaining dust, pushing the cloud outward until the newborn star stands clear and steady in the quiet corridor where it formed. Its glow is soft at first, filtered through the thinning gas, but grows cleaner as the dust drifts away. Let that image settle. This is no extraordinary star. It is modest, calm, stable, a yellow dwarf with a long quiet life ahead, a star that will burn not for millions of years, but for billions, holding its warmth with patient constancy. And it is from this gentle beginning, in an unremarkable arm of an ordinary galaxy, that the story of one particular system begins to unfold. For even the most ordinary stars can become the centers of extraordinary stories around the newly born star, still warm with the quiet glow of its first steady light. The remnants of the collapsing cloud begin to drift into order, not by design, not by intention, but by the gentle logic of gravity guiding loose matter into a slow surrounding dance. Imagine the space around this young sun. It is not empty. It is filled with dust, fine grains, soft fragments, whispers of the ancient cloud from which the star emerged. At first the dust drifts randomly, circling without rhythm, pulled into motion by the star's new and steady presence. But over time, a pattern forms. Particles that pass too close are tugged inward. Others are pushed outward by the faint pressure of the star's growing light. Little by little, the chaos thins, and the dust settles into a flat spinning disk, a quiet ring of leftover matter learning to follow a shared path. Let the image soften. The disk is wide, stretching farther than any orbit that will one day hold familiar worlds. Its inner regions glow faintly as dust grazes against dust, warming through gentle friction. Its outer regions remain cool, calm, a drifting sea, waiting for something to disturb its stillness. Within this disk, grains begin to touch, not with force, but with the slightest nudge, the kind of contact so delicate that only in the vacuum of space could it matter at all. Yet each touch builds something larger, a cluster here, a fragment there, tiny seeds of solid matter that grow through countless quiet collisions. The disk thickens, rings appear, regions of density slowly gather strength. There is no sound and no haste, only the slow knitting of a structure that will one day become a family of worlds, and all of it begins with drifting dust, following the soft pull of an ordinary star, far from the young stars and drifting clouds. Another story begins to take shape, not in matter, not in life, but in the quiet way. Light learns to travel through space. Imagine a single beam of light leaving a star that has just formed. It slips free from the glowing surface, crosses the soft haze around it, and enters open space. For the very first time, there is no sound, no resistance, only motion, steady, unwavering, the same for every beam that has ever existed. This is where the idea of a light year quietly begins, not as a unit, not as a number, but as a journey, the distance light covers. When it is given a year to travel across the dark, let that image settle. A single year of motion seems manageable in your life. Seasons change, memories settle, time feels gentle and familiar, but for light, a year is a path so long that nothing in ordinary experience can prepare the mind for it. It crosses distances you could never walk, never drive, never truly picture on a human scale, yet the beam keeps moving, slipping through the emptiness. With calm certainty, each second stretches it farther from the star that released it, and each second becomes a quiet record of time, a memory the beam carries in the distance behind it. When we later measure that distance, we are not measuring space alone, we are measuring how long that beam has been travelling, we are measuring age, we are measuring history. Every light year is a moment, frozen into distance. This is how the universe stores its memories in the quiet paths that light traces through the dark. As that beam of light continues outward, slipping farther from the place where it began, something gentle but profound occurs. With every mile it crosses, every second it moves, the distance behind it quietly becomes the past. Imagine watching it from far away. You do not see a traveller racing through space. You see a thread, thin, constant, stretching from the present into a moment long gone. The farther the light travels, the older that moment becomes. Distance, little by little, is transformed into memory. Let that image soften. Most distances in your life don't behave this way. A road is just a road. A shoreline is just a line of sand. They do not age as you walk toward them. But in the universe, distance is never only distance. It is a quiet record of how long light has been travelling to reach you. This is why a star 100 light years away is not 100 light years of space alone. It is 100 years of history, arriving in the form of photons that began their journey long before you existed. Look farther, and the effect deepens. 1,000 light years means 1,000 years into the past. 1,000,000 light years, 1,000,000 years of memory, carried in a single beam. The universe does not send you the present. It sends you echoes, layers of time, stacked across unimaginable distances. Every faraway galaxy, every dim cluster, every thin smear of starlight is a message that left its home long before humanity learned how to look upward. And as the beam continues its journey, what it shows you becomes younger and younger, not younger in appearance, but younger in reality. You're not just looking far, you are looking back. Light has turned distance into a map of ancient states, a quiet archive written across the sky. As your gaze drifts deeper into the night, the simple idea that light takes time begins to reshape everything you see. The sky stops feeling like a map of where things are now, and slowly becomes a map of how things used to be. Imagine standing beneath the stars, eyes adjusting to the dark. Some points of light feel close, warm even, as if they belong to this very moment. But many do not. They shine with a softness that only distance can create, a reminder that their photons have travelled for centuries or thousands of years before finding your eyes. Let that image linger. When you look at a nearby star, you see it as it was. When ancient empires were rising, look a little farther, and you see a moment when early humans were carving tools by the edges of quiet rivers, look beyond the Milky Way, and the light arriving now left its home before our species existed at all. The sky becomes layered, a quiet stack of histories, resting gently on top of one another. The farther your gaze travels, the further back in time you fall. It feels effortless, as if the universe has folded millions of years into a single direction, outward, and yet this transformation doesn't overwhelm the mind. It settles in slowly. You begin to understand that every patch of darkness holds entire eras you will never witness, and every soft glimmer is the ghost of something that might not even exist anymore. Distance breaks the idea of now. It scatters it across the sky in tiny fragments, each one a timestamp, disguised as a star. This is why astronomers never truly look at space. They look at time. They read the sky as a sequence of moments, spread out across unimaginable distances. The night becomes a quiet machine that pulls your vision backward with every extra light year you allow into your eyes. Once the sky begins to feel like a time machine, another softer strangeness follows, the realization that faraway light does not only show an older moment, it shows a slower moment. Imagine holding two memories at once, one from yesterday, fresh and clear, and one from long ago, gentler, faded at the edges, its details stretched thin by the years between you and it. Distant starlight behaves the same way. The farther the light has travelled, the more the universe has changed. During its journey, space itself has stretched, quietly, steadily, pulling the wavelength of the light into something longer, softer, redder than when it began. A glow that once blazed blue arrives at your eyes as a warm, tired red, the colour of a memory, travelling through expanding space. Let that settle. Distance is no longer just age, it is distortion, a gentle slowing of the moment you're trying to witness. A galaxy 1 billion light years away doesn't just look young, it looks slowed, its light pulled into a longer rhythm by the expansion of the universe during its billion-year journey. The farther you look, the more the effect deepens. At 2 billion light years, time feels stretched, like a soft piece of fabric. At 5 billion, light arrives carrying the subtle fatigue of a journey through a universe less familiar than the one you stand in now. At 10 billion, you begin to glimpse a cosmos, so young that even its colours seem different. This is why extreme distance feels so impossible, not because your mind cannot grasp the numbers, but because the universe refuses to keep distant moments intact. It stretches them, softens them, reddens them, until what you see is a slowed, altered echo of a reality long gone. Every additional light year does not just add distance, it adds distortion, it adds change, it adds the quiet influence of a universe expanding beneath the feet of travelling light. As you follow light farther and farther outward, past the gentle redshifts and the slow stretching of distant years, you reach a region of the universe where familiarity begins to fade, the colours soften, the shapes blur, and the moments carried by that ancient light belong to a cosmos that no longer resembles the one you know. Imagine standing on a quiet shore at dusk. Close to you, the waves make sense, small, steady, predictable in their rhythm. Farther out, their patterns become harder to read. At the horizon, they dissolve into a single trembling line, where your eyes can no longer separate one wave from another. Light behaves the same way. When you look deep enough into space, nearby galaxies look crisp, their motions easy to understand. But the farther you reach, the more the universe stretches their stories, slowing some parts, hiding others, leaving only a softened impression of what they once were. Let the image linger. At a few billion light years, galaxies appear younger, bright with newborn stars, and crowded with gas that has long since vanished from the galaxies near us. At 6 or 7 billion, you begin to see structures formed in a universe still learning how to arrange itself, and past 10 billion, you witness a cosmos so young that even gravity has not yet sculpted its full elegance. You are no longer just looking at distance, you are looking at a version of reality, built under different rules, a universe where time moved differently, where matter was denser, where the spaces between galaxies had not yet stretched into the vast quiet plains we see today. This is the edge of familiar time. Beyond it, the universe stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a memory, not because it disappears, but because the light that reaches you comes from an era before the cosmos grew into its current shape. Light years here do not measure distance alone, they measure transformation. With every billion-year step, you move deeper into a universe younger, stranger, and softer in its structure. Beyond the edge of familiar time, the universe grows quieter in a different way. Not empty, just young, so young that the light reaching you now left its home when galaxies were only learning how to exist. Imagine looking across this vast distance, where the sky's faintest glimmers come from a time when structures were still forming their first gentle outlines. You would not see spirals or grand ellipses or the sweeping arms that shape the galaxies near us. You would see small trembling clusters, patches of newborn stars gathering themselves into the earliest hints of what galaxies will one day become. These ancient lights feel fragile, as if a small change in the universe could have erased them entirely. Their colours are bluer, their shapes softer, their glow more uneven, not because they are fading, but because they are young, caught in the earlier stages of cosmic organizations. Let that image settle. A galaxy today is a thing with confidence, its stars arranged in broad patterns, its motion steady, its structure refined by billions of years of quiet gravitational sculpting. But these early galaxies are still learning to hold together. Their stars flicker in tight clusters, their gas moves in restless tides, and their light carries the youthful irregularity of something not yet finished. The distance you're looking across does more than reveal these early forms. It reveals an era where the universe itself was denser, warmer, and more chaotic, a time before patience had taught matter how to settle into graceful shapes. This is what makes extreme distance so quietly overwhelming. You're not moving through space alone. You are moving backward through the very evolution of cosmic structure. The farther the light has travelled, the younger the universe becomes. In your eyes, and here, in this faint ancient light, you witness the moment when galaxies first begin their long path toward order. The moment when the universe starts learning how to build the large-scale beauty we see today. Farther still, beyond the first trembling galaxies and the earliest clusters of newborn stars, the universe begins to dim in a way that feels different, not like fading, but like stepping into a time when light itself had only just begun to wander. Imagine looking so far that even the youngest galaxies disappear, leaving only a soft, uneven glow spread gently across the sky. It is not the light of stars. It is not the shine of spirals or clusters. It is the afterglow of the universe learning to cool, a warm primordial light that has been travelling for more than 13 billion years to reach you. This glow is faint now, stretched thin by the expanding fabric of space. What began as a bright searing radiance has softened into a whisper of microwave warmth, a memory so old that it belongs to a universe barely capable of forming atoms. Let that image linger. You are looking at a time before structure, before complexity, before the quiet dance of gravity had enough patience to gather matter into stars in this era. The universe is a glowing fog, dense uniform, filled with young light, trying to move freely. For the very first time, the farther you gaze, the more the present dissolves, space grows hotter, denser, more crowded, time tightens, distances shorten. The smooth cosmic web we know today shrinks into a formless bright cloud, stretching in every direction. This is the last light you are allowed to see. Beyond it, the universe becomes opaque, a place where photons could not yet travel, where matter and light were still locked together in a bright, restless embrace. Extreme distance has finally carried you to the edge of visibility, to a horizon not made of darkness, but of light so ancient it marks the universe's first breath of clarity. And here, in this distant glow, you feel the quiet truth of light years. That distance is not only space, not only time, but the soft boundary of what the universe allows you to witness. Beyond that ancient glow, the soft afterlight of a universe, taking its first clear breath, lies a region you cannot see, not because it is dark, but because light itself has never escaped from it. There are no galaxies here, no stars, no drifting clusters of matter waiting to be discovered. There is only silence, a silence formed not by emptiness, but by distance so extreme that even photons have not had enough time to arrive. Imagine standing at the shore of an endless ocean. You look as far as your eyes allow, but the horizon hides everything beyond it, not because nothing exists there, but because the curve of the Earth keeps that distant world forever out of view. The edge you see is not the edge of the world, just the edge of what light can bring you. The universe works the same way. Let that idea soften. We are surrounded by a cosmic horizon, a boundary created not by walls or borders, but by the age of the universe itself. Light has had 13.8 billion years to travel through space. Anything farther than that is simply too distant for its earliest photons to have reached us yet. The universe may be larger than you can imagine, perhaps infinite, but the visible part, the part lit by light that has finally arrived, is limited by time. When you look across the sky, you are not seeing the universe as it is. You are seeing the universe as far as light has had time to reveal. Beyond that, there are galaxies forming, clusters drifting, voids expanding, all hidden behind a horizon that moves outward, 1 light year at a time. This is the quiet truth. Behind the phrase observable universe, distance is not restricted by space, but by the speed of light and the age of everything. The farther you try to look, the more you realize that the universe keeps secrets, not deliberately, but simply because light has not yet carried them to us. One day, billions of years from now, our horizon will grow wider and new regions will fall into view. For now, we stand at the edge of what light can tell us. Even after understanding the horizon, the quiet boundary where light simply hasn't had enough time to reach us, another deeper strangeness appears. A strangeness born not from time, but from motion, because the universe is not still. It expands, softly, steadily, stretching the fabric of space in every direction at once. Imagine placing 2 small boats on a calm lake. They drift apart, not because they are moving, but because the surface beneath them is stretching. To each boat, the other appears to be leaving, yet neither is paddling. Distance grows. Without motion, the universe behaves the same way. Galaxies separate, not because they travel through space, but because space itself is expanding under their feet. The farther 2 galaxies are, the faster this expansion pushes them apart, not with force, not with sound, just with the quiet stretching of the cosmic fabric, let that image settle. There are regions so distant that the expansion of space carries them away from us, faster than light could ever bridge the gap. Not because they break the rules, nothing moves through space faster than light, but because space itself is doing the moving. A photon released in our direction from one of these distant galaxies is like a runner on an escalator, moving the opposite way, no matter how fast it tries to come toward us. The space between grows faster still. The light never arrives. The message never crosses. The distance forever outruns the traveller. This is the quiet paradox of a growing universe. There exist places we will never see, not because they are hidden, not because they are dark, but because the expansion outpaces even the fastest messenger. The cosmos allows, as time passes, more galaxies slip beyond this reach. The universe does not become darker. It simply becomes less connected. Light years stretch into lengths that no longer represent a path a photon can travel, but a measure of separation, growing faster than any journey. Here, distance becomes something new, a horizon that recedes, even as we try to approach. As the universe continues its slow, steady expansion, a quiet realization begins to form that light years are not only distances, not only memories, but boundaries. They mark the edges of what reality allows us to learn. Imagine holding a lantern in a vast dark valley. Its glow reaches only so far, revealing a gentle circle of trees, stones, and quiet shapes. Beyond that circle, the world continues, but your eyes cannot follow. You sense the landscape extending, but it remains hidden until the light touches it. Our observable universe is that lantern. Every light year expands the circle, revealing more of the cosmic valley. But the valley itself is growing faster than the lantern can shine. For every region we uncover, another slips just beyond reach, not lost, simply unlit. Let that idea soften. Knowledge is not blocked by walls or obstacles. It is limited by how far light can travel and how far space can stretch. The cosmos hides nothing deliberately. It simply outpaces the messengers that carry its story to us. This is why even the most powerful telescopes do not show the universe as it is, but as it was, filtered through billions of years of delay and distortion. We are not seeing objects frozen in distance. We are seeing versions of them, sent long ago, carried slowly toward us. Through an ever-expanding fabric, the light year becomes a quiet reminder that every piece of knowledge has a travel time, every observation has an age, and every image of the universe is a layered memory, not a window into the present. Some regions remain eternally beyond reach, not hidden in darkness, but drifting outward, faster than any photon can hope to cross. They exist, they evolve, they hold galaxies and stars, but they will never be part of our circle of light. And yet, there is a strange comfort in this. The universe does not need to be fully seen, to be fully felt. Its boundaries do not diminish its wonder. If anything, they deepen it, reminding us that existence is always more expansive than what light can carry. As you move toward the farthest edges of what light can reveal, a quiet shift begins to unfold, not in the universe, but in the way your mind tries to hold it. Distances that once felt vast start to lose their shape, their meaning dissolving. As the scales grow too large for intuition to follow, imagine thinking of a mile. Your body understands it. A walk, a brief effort, a familiar stretch of road. 1,000 miles still feels imaginable. A journey, a flight, a last drawn across a map. But a light year refuses to fit into any frame of experience. It is too large to picture, too slow to traverse, too deep in time for memory or imagination to sit with comfortably. Let that awareness soften. When you hear 10 light years, the mind tries to scale upward, a little more distance, a little more time, but each step multiplies in a way nothing human is built to grasp. 100 becomes surreal, 1,000 becomes abstract, 1,000,000 becomes silent, a number so large that even the echoes of meaning begin to fade, and yet the universe speaks in these distances with effortless ease. Galaxies drift apart. By millions of light years, clusters stretch across tens of millions. The cosmic web spans hundreds of millions, and the observable universe reaches outward for more than 40 billion light years in every direction. At these scales, distance becomes something different, not a measurement, but a kind of quiet surrender, a recognition that the human brain can hold awe more easily than it can hold numbers. This is why the cosmos so often feels like a dream, not because it is unreal, but because its distances are too vast for the mind to wrap itself around without loosening its usual sense of size and place. A light year is where imagination must take over for intuition, where perception leans into wonder, where meaning shifts from calculation to feeling. As distances grow beyond what the mind can hold, the universe begins to reveal a quieter, deeper truth, that its very structure is carved by separation, not by forces alone, not by collisions or heat, but by the calm, steady reach of distances stretched across billions of light years. Imagine drifting far above the cosmic web. At first, you see individual galaxies, soft spirals, distant ellipses, glowing islands of stars. But as you pull back, your perspective widens. Galaxies gather into clusters. Clusters gather into long glowing filaments. Dark voids open between them, vast silent regions, spanning hundreds of millions of light years, where almost nothing resides. Let the image soften. These structures are not carved by any single event. They form because light, gravity, and distance shape how matter learns to settle. Regions that begin slightly denser grow into galaxies. Regions slightly emptier stretch into voids. Over billions of years, distance becomes the sculptor, the quiet hand that arranges everything on the larger scales. The farther you look, the more this pattern emerges, not chaos, not randomness, but a gentle architecture woven across unimaginable spans. Filaments stretch like faint threads of light. Clusters bloom like knots in a cosmic tapestry. And the empty spaces, so wide, so still, give shape to the whole. This is the strange gift of light years. They show that the universe is not a scattered collection of isolated islands. It is a connected structure, bound not by proximity, but by the way distance guides matter over time. Gravity calls, light travels, space expands, and slowly, across billions of years, a pattern appears. You are looking at a cosmos that has grown into its shape by stretching itself, by allowing vast separations to define the pathways where galaxies form and where they do not. In these immense distances, the universe becomes readable, a quiet map of how everything has learned to arrange itself across time as the cosmic web stretches outward in every direction, woven from light years too large for any mind to hold. A quiet understanding begins to emerge, one that does not shrink us, but gently places us within the structure of everything. Imagine finding yourself inside one of those faint filaments, not at the center of a galaxy cluster, not in a crowded region of hundreds of galaxies, but in a calm spiraling arm of a single ordinary galaxy, floating along a thin glowing thread in an immense interconnected web. This is where we live, not in the middle of the universe, not at the edge, but in a quiet neighborhood whose significance comes not from its location, but from the way distance frames its meaning. Let that image rest. The nearest star lies 4 light-years away, a number so small on a cosmic map, yet impossibly vast for any journey you can picture. The nearest galaxy sits more than 2 million light-years distant, its light arriving as a memory from long before human beings existed, and the nearest galaxy cluster, a great shimmering city of stars, lies tens of millions of light-years out, so far that its earliest photons began travelling before Earth had grown forests. These distances don't diminish us, they contextualize us. They show that our place in the universe is not fragile or lost, but deeply connected to a structure far beyond our scale. For every great void, hundreds of millions of light-years wide, our region holds light, motion, warmth, and the quiet stability that allowed stars, planets, and eventually awareness to form. Distance draws boundaries around what we can see, but it also draws meaning around where we happen to be, not by chance, not by design, but by a long chain of cosmic events that placed us in a filament calm enough for complexity to grow. We are not central, we are not marginal, we are simply here, in a small luminous corner of a vast cosmic lattice, stretching beyond imagination, and in this placement, there is something peaceful, something grounding, something quietly profound, as we settle into our quiet corner of the cosmic web, surrounded by distances so immense, they dissolve into feeling rather than measure. A final gentle awareness begins to rise. Light-years do not only describe the universe, they shape how we perceive it. Imagine looking at a nearby star. Its light feels immediate, almost present, as if it belongs to your life, your moment, your sky. But look a little farther, and the feeling changes. The light grows softer, more historical, as though you're not observing an object, but remembering one. This shift is subtle, but it guides the entire way. The universe appears to us. Let that image soften. We never see anything as it is, only as it was, when its light began the journey toward us. Reality at cosmic scales is experienced as a series of echoes. The nearer the echo, the clearer the sense of now. The farther the echo, the more it becomes a window into a younger, stranger universe. Galaxies millions of light-years away are not distant objects. They are fossils of light. Galaxies billions of light-years away are not snapshots. They are memories sent from a cosmos that no longer exists. In that form, this is why the night sky feels simultaneously eternal and fragile, because we are looking at time woven across vast distances, a tapestry stitched together from different eras, layered in a single view, and in this layering, something profound takes shape. The universe does not come to us all at once. It arrives gradually, in waves of light, spread across billions of years. We are always receiving different chapters of its story. At the same time, this softens the idea of reality. It stretches it. It reminds us that what we experience is only the part of the universe that light has chosen to deliver so far, and yet, this limitation is not a barrier. It is an invitation, a quiet encouragement, to see the cosmos not as a fixed arrangement, but as a flowing history, constantly unfolding across unimaginable distances. As you absorb the idea that every sight in the universe is a message from the past, a quiet question rises almost on its own. What does it mean to live inside a reality built entirely from delayed light? Imagine sitting beneath a clear night sky. Every star above you is showing you a time-stamped memory, some decades old, some thousands, some so ancient they reach back beyond the earliest civilizations. You are surrounded, not by the present universe, but by a mosaic of different moments, stitched into one seamless view. Let that awareness settle. Your everyday experience teaches you that vision is immediate, that seeing is knowing, that light arrives fast enough to make the world feel whole, but on cosmic scales, light is slow, so slow that entire epochs pass, while a single beam crosses the dark. To live inside delayed light is to exist in a reality where now becomes local. The present extends only as far as light has had time to travel. Everything beyond that radius belongs to another chapter, a chapter still on its way toward you. And yet, this doesn't isolate us. It connects us. It means we share the night with the universe's deepest history, with stars in their childhood, galaxies in their first formations, structures still trembling, with the energy of a younger cosmos. Distance becomes a soft translation between what is and what was. Every glimpse outward is a gentle blending of countless different ages coexisting in your field of view. This is why the sky feels endless, not because it stretches forever, but because it carries time in every direction. To live inside delayed light is to inhabit a universe that reveals itself slowly, carefully, with the patience of billions of years. It shows us fragments, whispers, shimmering echoes, never the whole at once, but enough for understanding, enough for wonder. As you grow comfortable with the idea of living inside delayed light, another understanding settles in, gentle, steady, almost musical. The universe is not revealed all at once. It arrives in rhythms. Imagine listening to a distant echo, moving slowly across a valley. It reaches you in waves, first the nearest reflection, then the next, then another carried from farther cliffs. Each echo belongs to a different distance, a different moment, yet together they create a single continuous sound. Cosmic light behaves the same way. Nearby stars send quick notes, messages only a few years old. Distant galaxies send longer tones, memories stretched by millions of years. The most remote parts of the universe send whispers so ancient they feel like the opening chords of creation itself. Let that image soften. Every point of light in the sky is part of an immense slow-moving harmony, a layered chorus of different eras singing through the dark, toward the tiny place where you stand. Light years, then, are not just measurements, but intervals, the spacing between notes. In the universe's long unfolding song, close intervals create familiar melodies. Nearby stars, the clusters within reach, the galaxies that still resemble our own, wide intervals, carry the low resonant tones of the early cosmos, the first galaxies, the trembling clusters, the fading afterglow of the universe's earliest light. Together, these distances form the only version of the universe we can experience, not a single moment, but a symphony of moments overlapping, and in this slow harmony, your place becomes clear. You are not outside the music. You are listening from within it, a living part of the universe's long heartbeat of light. The rhythms stretch beyond you, beyond humanity, beyond even the life of our galaxy. Yet somehow, in this fleeting era, the signals align, just right for your eyes to take them in as the universe continues its slow song of light. A final realization rises, gentle but deeply unsettling. The scales you've been wandering through, the distances measured in millions and billions of light years, do not fit inside the human mind. Not because they are complicated, but because they are too large for the brain to translate into anything familiar. Imagine trying to picture a year. You can. Memories fill it, moments anchor it. Stretch that image to 10 years, and it still holds shape. A century becomes hazy, but not impossible. 1,000 years begins to dissolve. 1,000,000 ceases to feel real. Now imagine a light year, not a span of time, but the distance light travels in that time, a beam moving faster than anything you can imagine, never slowing, never resting. Even 1 light year breaks the rhythm of human intuition. Let that awareness soften. When you hear 1 billion light years, your mind searches for something to compare it to, a journey, a map, a scale you've touched before. But nothing helps. You are trying to fit a cosmic ocean into a cup, made for rivers, and yet the universe speaks in these distances. Without effort, galaxies drift apart by billions of light years as casually as clouds drifting across a warm afternoon sky. Structures the size of entire superclusters span scales that erase the meaning of words like far or large or beyond. The mind struggles not because the universe is unreachable, but because language itself cannot carry these magnitudes. Thought collapses at the edges of scale. Imagination stretches until it thins into silence, and in that silence, a curious peace emerges. You are confronted with something you cannot contain and do not need to. Wonder does not require comprehension, or does not require measurement. The universe breaks the mind only to open it, widening it beyond the boundaries of everyday thought. Light years overwhelm the intellect, but they nourish the sense of belonging to something vast, gentle, and deeply mysterious. When the mind reaches its limit, when distances stretch so far that numbers lose their meaning, something gentle begins to occur. Your attention shifts from trying to grasp the scale to simply resting within it. You stop measuring the universe, and instead, you start feeling your place inside it. Imagine standing beneath the night sky on a quiet, windless evening. The stars do not rush you. They do not demand understanding. They simply shine, each one a memory, a distant echo, arriving in its own time. In that stillness, your moment becomes small, in a way that feels comforting, not frightening. Let that feeling deepen. Human history spans only a few thousand years, a blink compared to even the nearest galaxies. Planets form, stars ignite, galaxies collide and merge across billions of light years and billions of years in a rhythm far too slow for any single lifetime to witness. We occupy just an instant of this long cosmic unfolding, but smallness is not insignificance. It is alignment. It is harmony with the quiet pace of a universe that reveals itself slowly, softly, across unimaginable distances. Our moment is precious because it arrives at exactly the right time, when the universe is old enough for galaxies to be stable, for stars to live long, for planets to cool, and for light to have travelled far enough to paint the night sky with its ancient stories. We exist in a rare window, when the cosmos is bright, rich with visible structure, awash in light that has had time to reach us. Far in the past, the universe was too young and too dense for such clarity. Far in the future, the expansion may pull distant galaxies beyond sight forever, leaving the sky dimmer, emptier, quieter. Our little moment sits in between a fleeting age where distance still carries meaning, where light years still bring us messages from a wide luminous universe. This is the gift of our cosmic timing, to live in a chapter where the universe is visible as you hold this rare moment, this brief window where the universe is bright enough for its light to reach us. A deeper shift begins quietly within your sense of self. Those immense distances, those impossible spans of light years, begin to reshape not the cosmos, but you. Imagine sitting alone with your thoughts. On a calm evening, the world around you is small. A room, a street, a familiar landscape. Your worries fill that space easily. They feel large, immediate, pressing. But step outside and look upward, and something soft happens. Your concerns don't vanish, but they loosen, they breathe, they make room for something wider to share the moment with you. Let that widening settle. When you hold even a glimpse of distances measured in millions of light years, your internal scale shifts. Your life becomes lighter, not smaller, as though your thoughts finally have space to unfold without pressing against the edges of your mind. The universe does not belittle you. It contextualizes you. It shows that existence is not a tight enclosure, but an open field, stretching quietly in every direction. In that openness, your experiences gain meaning from contrast, from the realization that awareness itself is something rare. In a cosmos mostly made of silence, light years gently remind you that you are part of a story far bigger than any single moment or single life. You are not the center, and yet you are woven into a narrative of stars, galaxies, and distances so vast they reshape every attempt to define significance. This change in perspective is subtle but profound. You begin to see yourself not as a separate observer, but as a small expression of the same universe whose light washes over you. In that realization, there is a quiet peace, the sense that your existence is both fragile and deeply connected to the long unfolding rhythm of cosmic time. As the idea of distance settles into you, not as a number, not as a challenge, but as a quiet presence, a final understanding begins to unfold. Light years, those impossible spans that once strained the mind, start to feel less like measurements and more like reflections of what it means to exist at all. Imagine holding a single moment in your hands, a breath, a heartbeat, the warmth of being aware. Compared to billions of light years, it seems small, almost invisible, and yet it is the only place where the universe becomes conscious of itself. Let that realization soften. A light year is vast, but it cannot feel. A galaxy is enormous, but it cannot reflect. Only a mind, fragile, tiny, carried on a small planet in a quiet spiral arm, can turn distance into meaning. This is the quiet reversal, hidden within all the numbers. The universe is large, but scale alone is not significance. Light travels, stars burn, galaxies drift through the dark, but none of it matters until something alive is there to notice. We are small, but we are the lens through which the cosmos becomes a story. We give shape to the distances, we give texture to the light. We turn 14 billion years of cosmic wandering into something felt, something understood, something gently held. Light years teach us that existence is layered, stretching from the present moment to the most ancient stars. They show us that awareness lives at the intersection of incomprehensible distance and fleeting time, and in that intersection there is wonder, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that lingers in the space between thoughts, the kind that makes a night sky feel like a companion instead of a void. To be alive is to stand in the glow of light that has travelled for billions of years to reach you, and to let that light change the way you see your place in everything. As the long journey through light years begins to settle, something unexpected unfolds. The universe, which once felt distant, unreachable, almost too large to hold in thought, starts to feel familiar, not because it has grown smaller, but because you have grown gentler in the way you look at it. Imagine walking through a quiet room at dusk. Shadows soften, edges blur. Everything you see feels both new and known. The cosmos becomes like that room, a place vast in scale, yet intimate in feeling, as though distance itself has exhaled. Let that sensation drift. Galaxies no longer appear as cold, unreachable islands scattered across darkness. They become landmarks in a wide, slow landscape, places whose light has travelled patiently to meet your eyes. Even the most distant glow feels less like a stranger and more like a story, waiting quietly to be heard. And as familiarity deepens, your sense of isolation loosens. You begin to understand that belonging does not require proximity. It only requires perspective. What once overwhelmed you now feels like a companion, the night sky shifting from an expanse to a presence. In this softening, light years stop being barriers and start becoming bridges, gentle links between your small moment and the sprawling history of the universe itself. As the universe becomes familiar, distance begins to change its meaning in your mind. It no longer feels like a measure of separation or a cold number stretching into the dark. Instead, it softens, becoming a quiet language the cosmos uses to express its history. Imagine standing beside a longshore line. You cannot see the farthest waves, yet you feel their presence. In the way the water moves near your feet, distance does not erase connection. It simply spreads it out, allowing each part of the ocean to speak in its own time. Cosmic distance works the same way. A nearby star whispers quickly. A distant galaxy sends a slower echo. The earliest light, the universe's first shy glow, arrives like a memory, carried across unimaginable ages, and somehow, even though these signals travel from different corners of space and different chapters of time, they gather gently into a single sky you can look at in one glance. Let that thought rest. Light years are not obstacles. They are invitations, asking you to listen to the universe's story at the pace it chooses to tell it. They remind you that meaning doesn't weaken with distance. It deepens, it accumulates, it folds time and space into layers you can experience all at once. Each time you look upward, and in this soft reinterpretation, the cosmos becomes less like a vast stage and more like a quiet companion, patient, unhurried, constantly arriving in small beams of memory. Distance no longer feels like a gulf. It feels like breath, the gentle rise and fall of a universe expanding slowly around you. And now, after wandering through distances that stretch beyond imagination, after listening to light that has travelled longer than worlds have existed, the journey arrives. At its quiet closing breath, the universe, once overwhelming in scale, feels softer now, not smaller, but more at ease within you. The light years you followed outward have folded gently inward, becoming less about measurement and more about presence. Imagine sitting beneath the night sky. One last time, no need to reach for meaning, no need to hold the numbers, just the soft awareness that every point of light above you has crossed impossible distances to share a moment with the tiny place where you happen to be. Let that settle. You're not standing outside the cosmos, trying to understand it. You are inside it. A brief conscious pause in an ocean of time, aware for a moment of the light that moves through everything. And in that awareness, distance becomes intimate, not a boundary, but a quiet bridge between your small moment and the long unfolding history that made it possible. Light years do not break the mind after all. They open it, softly widening it, until wonder becomes a natural way of seeing, and somewhere in that widening, the universe becomes a little less distant, a little less mysterious, and a little more familiar.